Hi, I'm David Riley. Welcome to this week's edition of People and Politics. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to the show. That'd be a great help to me, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode, where I'm joined by MP for North East Place, Wendy Chamberlain. We're going to be talking about yesterday's autumn statement and a whole bunch of other issues. Welcome to People and Politics. Wendy, thank you very much for coming on and joining me on my new podcast.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
And I'm thinking about today's conversation, and I turned on to watch the budget yesterday, and there you were right there on Sky, and I thought, that's a good place to start the budget yesterday. So now that that's the setup there, what did you make of that?
So it's interesting how the conversation in the first instance for those in the Westminster bubble has turned to when we think the general election is going to be, because I think it's generally accepted that the autumn statement this week did put out a number of things that suggest that a spring general election could be on the table, particularly when we'll have a full budget following in March. So some of the things that were floated, like inheritance tax or even income tax cuts, I think if we're going to see them, we'll see them in March. But in terms of what it meant, clearly there were tax cuts in the national insurance percentage reduction, which will see more money in people's pockets. And I think nobody denies that COVID happened and the war in Ukraine happened, and we're seeing further geopolitical issues going on globally. But this is a government that has been responsible for 20 tax rises since December 2019, and doing a little now to help people is just clearly not going far enough. And there's been lots of talk about the fact that benefits have been uprated in line with inflation. The triple lock has been adhered to, and those were things that we really weren't clear were going to happen. But those have happened because the government has got a bit more headroom following the OBR estimates. But that headroom is predicated on future budget cuts to public services. And I think, when you speak to them, certainly the people that I speak to in my constituency and elsewhere, they don't want cuts to services. And the other thing that's obviously really worrying from a benefits perspective, and particularly for those with disabilities, is the changes to requirements to work capability assessments. And I find it very strange that a government that seems so allergic to working from home during and post-pandemic is now insisting that there are plenty of jobs that can be done from home and that people with disabilities should be doing them. So yes, obviously we want people to be working if they can, because the power of work to kind of people's self-esteem and sense of dignity, all those things are absolutely true. But we also need to make sure that we have a safety net that is there to support those who can't, whether that's with long-term disabilities or in the short term. So lots to be concerned about there. The final thing to say on the budget for me, or the autumn statement, was I raised carers allowance yesterday. Now, obviously, carers allowance has been phased out in Scotland as it transfers to Social Security Scotland. But my real concern, I've got numerous concerns around carers allowance. It's not enough for a start. Yeah. But if the government is actually wanting people to get back to work, and unpaid carers, for example, to be doing some work, carers allowance is a complete disincentive from that, because it's a cliff edge. You earn over the £139 a week and you just lose your carers allowance entirely. And given the welcome changes to the increases in minimum national minimum wage, potentially that becomes even more of a disincentive. So I'm very pleased to say that the Chancellor agreed to meet me on that subject. But I'm still obviously post my Carers Leave Act very keen to keep working in that unpaid carer space.
Now, I think it's great the Chancellor has agreed to meet you on the care thing, because it's like, it's a bit like universal credit. When you earn so much, you fall off a cliff edge, and it's most unfair, and it's a disincentive for people getting back into work. And as you say, for a party that's really, really keen to get disabled people working, they're really not making it difficult.
No, it should be seen as a positive thing, finding the right jobs that people with, the wide range of disabilities that people experience have, getting back into work. And maybe it's just because it's coming from the Conservatives, but it feels like it's a punitive step. And I know there's already real anxiety within various communities on this, and charities and third sector organisations have been sharing their concerns with me already too.
Yeah, I don't know how much you know about my background. I would love to work in that, and I feel like I have great skills and great things to offer, but I feel getting into employment is nigh on impossible, and I've tried for the best part of 2 decades to get meaningful employment, and but the Conservatives make it sound easy, like there's loads of jobs available, and there are quite a lot of vacancies at the moment, which the Conservatives are looking to fill. But if you look carefully at these posts, a lot of them are in retail, hospitality, security. They're not jobs that disabled people can do from home. And
no, absolutely.
So I've invited them. I've invited the minister on to talk, because I would love to. I'd love the Conservatives to understand how impossible someone like me with 2 degrees find it to get work. But I don't think they have that.
And I wonder as well what conversations they're having with employers.
Yeah.
Because for me, you need to get employers to change mindset, to work from the basis of what can somebody do as opposed to what somebody can't do, which I think is often the starting place. And to some extent with some degree of understanding, because, obviously businesses, private sector have, targets to meet, etc. But I think there's a lot more to be done in terms of how do you make the workplace more inclusive, and therefore how potentially could you divide up jobs or the tasks within jobs so that disabled people could carry out some elements of them. I think when we talk about flexibility, we often just think about the hours worked rather than the type of work.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that employers have been having similar conversations to those who've just outlined for a long time, but economic rates haven't really changed among the disabled community.
Yeah, no, they haven't gone up, and as I say, I think that it feels like that what the government is announcing is its overall aim is to get the welfare budget down, as opposed to really getting more disabled people into good quality fulfilling work.
Yeah.
Bringing the welfare budget down should be a byproduct. It shouldn't be the overall objective.
Yeah, that's right. But before the statement, quite a few days before, people were predicting that Jeremy Hunt would impose benefit sanctions or try to, but I'm really saying there was no way. That didn't come out yesterday at all, did it?
Well, they're obviously doing the consultation on work capability assessments just now, and the Liberal Democrats have had concerns about those for some time, and conditionality. And one of the key challenges has been those making the assessments are not sufficiently skilled or knowledgeable in the conditions that people have. So they're making broad brush assumptions about what people can and can't do. So as I say, I'm not surprised that those people with disabilities, those working in third sector organisations that support them, are pretty suspicious. And I suppose the reality is back to my very first point about the autumn statement, when is the general election going to come? So when is the government actually going to complete its consultation, say what the findings of that were, and make any changes? I think they are running out of road quite quickly.
Yeah, particularly, I thought there might be more. I thought there might be more in the way of sweeteners yesterday, but I think they'll probably come in this, in the springtime. He has cut national insurance tax, but I've spent the last 24 hours trying to get my head around frozen thresholds and fiscal lag, and I find that quite complicated to be
Yes.
honest. But the bottom line of it is we're still the highest taxation.
Yes, yes. And of course, remember that in Scotland, we've got a different income tax system anyway, so our higher earners are already paying more. And again, I'll go back to the fact that I don't necessarily have an issue with paying more tax, but I suppose I'm more rooted about what the Scottish Government is doing with that tax take and how it is spending it. And I'm sure we could have lots of conversations about that.
Lots of what, because I'm around saying that you're you're the Liberal Democrat spokesperson on the Constitution.
I'm not anymore. So currently, when I was first elected in December 2019, by the January I had 5 job titles, which was spokesperson for Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, international development, and constitutional affairs. And then in September 2020, when Ed Davey became permanent, the new leader of the Liberal Democrats, I became chief whip and DWP spokesperson. So I've now been doing both those roles for over 3 years. And indeed, on the chief whip front, I'm the first woman to do that job for the party, which is quite an honour.
That's fantastic. That's great. You've already had a lot of jobs since
yes. That's what happens when you're a smaller party. Hopefully there'll be less of an issue at the next election, after the next election.
Yeah, because you were first elected in 2015, but before that you had a number of careers as well. You were in the police, you taught at Fife College, and you worked for Diageo, that big Fife employer that so yeah, you've had a lot of
yes, and I think it's about finding the balance. People, when we talk about diversity in politics, there's clearly so much more we need to do. We still don't have parity from a gender perspective in Parliament. We certainly don't have anything like the representation of people with disabilities that we should have. But part of that is also a balance of experience. So I'm the only female former police officer in the Commons, which, given some of the issues we've had in recent years, such as the Metropolitan Police, misogyny, etc. I've ended up speaking about those too. But I think it's been useful for people to see somebody who's had real life experience that can then be applied to the job of being an MP. It feels authentic, and we talk sometimes. We talk about authenticity. And then it actually becomes fake. But I think it's always really important that, and this is true for all parties, that MPs are just people ultimately, who bring their different skills and knowledge to the role.
I think it's imperative that politicians have careers before they go into politics, because there's not this whole idea of career politicians, people who go to the public schools and then they get plugged into Oxford, and then it's like Montessori for politicians, and so but I don't think it's the same as people going in with real lived experience of working in frontline policing or something.
Yeah. I don't know if you've read it, David, and just but a recommendation to you and your listeners is Ian Dunt's recent book, How Westminster Works and Why It Doesn't, which is a very accessible introduction to the challenges across Westminster and Whitehall about how that sort of groupthink of PPE graduates, lack of experience or knowledge in areas such as STEM, challenges within the civil service, how they promote, promotion is more important than specialism. There's so much in our system that needs to be changed, updated, and improved, because ultimately, it means that government, whatever level that be, local, regional, or national, delivers a prudent service to residents and taxpayers.
Yeah, it's something that we and Westminster and the Lords has been crying for reform for a long time. And I think you mentioned earlier, and we both know that excuse me, there's next to no representation of disabled people at Westminster.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of, for example,
Well,
Baroness Tanny Gray Thompson in the Lords,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, there's very little, if any, in the Commons. I'm wondering how that could change, because to stand for public office is very difficult. It's very physical. It's very, you have to be a phenomenally good orator as well. And I think that in itself debars a lot of disabled people for standing.
I think there are a couple of MPs that have more hidden disabilities, but the most obvious MP I can think of with a disability is Paul Maynard, who's mildly cerebral palsied from Blackpool. And I've actually done quite a lot of work with him before he went into government at the recent reshuffle on ending the need for food banks. That's one of the all-party parliamentary groups I'm involved in. And actually, it's been really valuable to have somebody from the governing party in the group, involved, engaged, and concerned about an issue that's true in all constituencies, particularly post cost of living.
Yeah, I have emailed Paul Maynard to invite him on, so maybe I need to drop him a reminder that I'm sure we'd had an interesting chat. But
I'll if I see him in the Commons, I'll give him a nudge after today.
That's helpful. Yeah, thank you. But when people think about the last 13 years of Conservative government and austerity and cuts, do then people forget that the Lib Dems were part of that government for 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the huge, that's the reason why I'm part of a group of only 11, because from an electoral perspective, the coalition was very tough on the Liberal Democrats. And I wasn't a member of the party during coalition. I didn't join until 2015, crying at Nick Clegg on the telly, as I say. But yeah, I suppose when you look back, and when you see the consequences of austerity, it feels very difficult to justify some of the decisions that were made. I think you have to look at where they were at that time and what other global economies were doing, which was the same. I always say, look what happened once the Liberal Democrats were out of government. That's when things really got tough. But yeah, there's no doubt that why do politicians or why do political parties exist? Because they do want to wield power so that they can be effective and deliver their policies. But I always say, from a politics perspective, that I think the vast majority of people who get involved in politics care about their local community, because that's usually one of their roots in, and actually want a number of the same things. They just have a different way of how that is best achieved. And I think back to that bit about sort of tolerance and kindness in politics, we have to remember that. But for those who were at the brunt took the brunt of those political decisions. I can understand why that's very difficult, but it does feel that things certainly. I think in hindsight, the Liberal Democrat Conservative coalition, you might have disagreed with a lot of what it did, but it did provide stable government in a way that has certainly not happened since 2015.
It's been lacking. It's been lacking for. I can remember going to protest in Perth. There was a Scottish Liberal, Democrat conference in Perth. I can't remember the year, and I was one of a rowdy bunch outside because it was right up when the worst of the cuts and the attacks on welfare, and there's a lot of Liberal Democrat people going into the Perth Hall saying, well, why are you shouting at us? It's nothing to do with us.
I think part of it was yeah. So I think there is that bit around how much power did the party actually have in the coalition, and was the coalition sort of negotiated well enough? I think there's absolutely also no doubt that the Liberal Democrat membership did not like a number of things that happened during coalition. So that's why they've been saying it's not to do with us, because they would have disagreed with some of the things that were happening. And I suppose some of it is just the reality of being the smaller party in a coalition. I also just think my final point would be that, people always say, what are the Liberal Democrats for, or what's the point of view, or what do you stand for? And although people couldn't necessarily articulate that, I certainly think that going into coalition with the Conservatives was certainly not what the majority of people thought the Liberal Democrats were about. And so I think it really did. Yeah. It caused even more damage as a result. Where we are our history through the amalgamation of the Liberal Party and the Social Democratic Party. I think ultimately we are a party of the centre left, right. And not one of the centre right, although there are elements within that, within the party of that. And I think coalition was a sort of where the centre right made the decisions. And I think if you look at where the party is now, particularly in areas such as DWP, I think it's quite clear that we're on the left, and I would see myself personally as a Social Democrat first and a Liberal second.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I've had a look at the Liberal Democrat manifesto, and one thing that we've touched on already, the need for employment, stable employment for everybody, to people in poverty. And I've noticed that one of your manifesto commitments is to guarantee jobs for 16 to 24-year-olds, which is great. And I thought, would you go as far as to guarantee jobs for disabled people, or is that something quite different?
So I think, so you'll be referring to our manifesto from 2019. So the 2024 manifesto is currently in development. And I think we're looking at a number of policy areas. Anybody listening, if you really want to have a closer look, we did a policy paper that came to our conference last year called Fairer Society for All, where we considered issues around sort of guaranteed minimum income, those kind of policies. I think in terms of those guarantees, I think it's important that you make them. It's then the living up to them that is the challenge. And I suppose in terms of disabilities, who want, you would want all 16 to 24-year-olds ideally to work if they're not in employment, if they're not already in employment or education or further training. But for people with disabilities, I think it's important that we acknowledge that not all of them will want to work or be capable of working. So I think I would want to not make any commitment here today. That's a very politician thing to say. Certainly to go away and look at it. Yeah. I would want to guarantee a job for any disabled person who wanted to work.
I can't imagine whoever's in power would do that, because I think that if we leave things how they are, I think disabled people will continue to be, undervalued, underrepresented, underemployed. And, it may be too late for people like me, but maybe, younger disabled people, might have ended up with a career, and it's a sort of phenomenal frustration and regret that I never got into a job or a career, and I think it could well be too late, but might help other people.
Mm-hmm. What would you want to do?
Well, I did molecular medicine at Dundee, and then postgrad in Manchester. So I wanted to work in biomedical research, and it really grates me a lot, particularly the Scottish government going on about we can't get skilled people in Scotland. Well, I'm here and I'm skilled and I'm tough, but I've never been employed. But unfortunately, I think my science is too long ago. It was, it wasn't yesterday that I did science. And so I would love to work in some sort of political broadcasting, political media, which is why I'm doing this podcast. I just had an idea. I thought, I want to talk about politics and I want to better that. And I want to work in political broadcasting. So I set up this podcast, and you never know who might see it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, anything that I'm not sure how much my appearance will help you, but hopefully, and I'll make sure I'll be tweeting it out and things like that as well.
Tremendously. It's just so nice to talk to you, and I'm really grateful for your time for coming on. And
no problem.
And I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to come back on potentially maybe once we know when the general election is happening or something like that. That would be really good. But no, it's been a great pleasure, and I wish you every success with this venture. Hopefully, it gets a wide audience.
Thank you very much.